So we're here in Hobbister Moor. How big is the actual moor that we own?
We actually own 2,000 acres out here, Gerry, right the way as far as the eye can see, but we only cut a very small proportion of that 2,000 acres. The main site is a SSSI site, a site of special scientific interest, and within that there's a number of key stakeholders that we work with on the whole site itself.
So does that mean we can't come here all year round?
The main reason why, I suppose we could come here all year round, but weather dictates that. The main reason we don't cut peat, let's say January, February, March, is because we can't get into the banks. This is all waterlogged normally. We would normally start the harvest as soon as we can, early April, and again weather dictates that. The harvest then takes right the way through, probably 6 months every year.
I've noticed there's no trees anywhere. Does the weather dictate what type of peat we have here?
Certainly the wind puts paid to the trees, but yes, on a serious point, the vegetation that had previously been here many thousands of years dictates the type of peat we've got. We've mainly got grassy, mossy type vegetation, as you can see here today, and heather. Many thousands of years ago it had been fairly similar. So different parts of Scotland will have different types of vegetation, which leads to different types of peat. And that's why we're able to say that our peat is unique, and it does give and impart a unique flavour to our whiskies. So what makes our peat different than the other peat beds in Scotland? Is it purely just because there's no trees in it, or is it? Primarily, lignin is a key component to the plant world, second only to cellulose. But lignin is one of these distinctive compounds that we can actually track the type of vegetation that was there before. Basically, lignin, you get more lignin in woody, bushy materials, whereas there's less lignin in grasses and moss. So that's why we're able to, over a number of years has been trials and tests carried out. That's why we're able to say that the peat here is completely different to peats in other areas of Scotland through some of these distinctive chemical compounds that we can measure.
So that's why we're not a big smoky whisky. We're not that big phenolic monster. It's very gentle, yeah.
Yes, that's right. That's one of the reasons. The other reason from that would be the amount of peat that we would burn in the kilns. But the peat banks themselves are very important. We don't just use the top part or the middle part or the bottom of the bank. We use the whole lot, and we know through a number of years of trials that we have to do that. And quite simply, if we don't, we will produce a different style of whisky.
So how many tonnes of peat do we use a year at Highland Park?
We are consented to cut maximum 300 tonnes every year. The last few years we've cut between 250 and 280 tonnes.
So once we cut the peat here, we can't just use it straight away, can we? Because it's obviously too wet. So how long do we leave it?
Again, it's very weather dependent, Gerry. Very briefly, we cut the top layer off, which is the vegetation and some of the rootlet, and we set that aside. And at the very end of the cutting process, the last thing we do is we put that top vegetation back down so it grows again. We then cut the bank and set it aside. And the drying process starts there, and we're trying to create a crust on the peat. And once we've created a crust on the peat, we then raise the peat so that the other side of the peat that hasn't been exposed to the air dries and creates a crust there. And only then we'll take it into the distillery. And that can take anything 2, 3, 4 months, very weather dependent.
So if we cut just under 300 tonnes a year, and we own 2,000 acres of land, I suppose at some point it'll run out. Do you know when that will be?
It certainly won't be in my time. We have carried out studies over the last 10 years, and we've got in a region of 300 years worth of peat. But yes, this particular bank's potentially run out, but there's an awful lot away over the hill there that'll see us for many years in advance.
And at the end of that, I suppose, will be the most northerly unsmoked whisky.
We've possibly, certainly with this banks here, but I must emphasise 2,000 acres of peat runs into many hundreds of years. We have got to cut particular areas of peat, there's no question about that, and we've got a 20-year consent to do that. But as we approach the end of the 20 years, we will be considering other banks. Once we use the peat from one banks, some banks here will then open up other banks in the area. So it's a very much a long-term management plan for the restoration and conservation of the peat hill.
And do the people of Orkney themselves, do they still cut peat? Do they come here and cut peat, or do they have...
Historically they had their own banks, but obviously with the change of lifestyles we all lead nowadays, there's less and less open fires. Some of the small crofts still have got their own banks, but it is, I suppose, a dying trade, if you like, and there's less and less peat fire burning. We would be the biggest consumer of peat in the islands.